Bring the Hollywood home a little bit. I'll give you another one from the book. It's from the Theatre Royal in Waterford, but you'll find the stories occur nearly in all the cinemas. Wait till I see. Oh, I got the same one again. 29. It's efficiency now over here. This is the Theatre Royal in Waterford, but you'll find the same thing in Youghal. The noise would continue unabated, and 3 o'clock approached, it would even increase in volume. As soon as the curtains opened and the house lights dimmed, however, the din reached unbelievable level. And with the first flicker of light from the projector, a great burst of cheering would echo around the building. Suddenly, as if it had been all switched off, the noise would cease, and as the film rolled, all eyes would be glued on the screen in breathless excitement. The cheers would break out anew when over the hill came Hopalong Cassidy, or Tarzan, or Jim Brown, or one of the cowboys, and they would be instantly transported far away in their vivid imaginations. Now, much the same thing in Youghal. I remember Christmas Day there was always a matinee, and we wore little jerkins with zip up, so we'd always bring in a gun which we got from Santa, tucked into the jersey. Now there was a strict rule, all guns had to be left at the office, but we had cap guns, or they had a little spot of gunpowder in the cap, so when they'd explode there'd be a big flash in the dark and a horrible noise, and someone would repeat to go bang bang. So anyway, we'd hide these, and when Hopalong Cassidy would inevitably be trapped by the bad guys, the cavalry would inevitably come over the hill, and the minute the cavalry come over the hill, all the guns out, bang bang bang, and the whole place would erupt, and Maisie and Nana Horgan would come in with a flash lamp. Who has that gun? And of course they wouldn't want to catch him, like, because they were all paying their fourpence, they were all paying customers, but they'd shine the light on the guns and go back in. And so that was our Christmas. Now, it's easy enough, I suppose, to we all went out of that, and we all thought we were the cowboys, and we played cowboys, and I think that was a good thing. If you played good cowboys in later life, you were able to take on an adventure. If you could organise yourself into a game of cowboys, or a game of football, or a game of follow the leader, in later life you'll be able to organise yourself into a factory floor, or a union, or start up a business. If you played war films and got yourself organised, well, you could face problems, sickness, and maybe even the surgeon's knife in later life. So I'm a great believer in unstructured children's play. Anyway, I stuck that in just as a teacher. So we go on. Any of us over 40, and that's most of us here, will immediately need to know nothing except just take the book and enjoy this, because it is a sort of a great, a compendium, a great kind of textbook of film, because it shows all the films. Now, I'm sure most of you have the same problem as I have. You remember a film and say, who was that actor? And you cannot remember the name. Well, you can look it up and you'll surely get it here. That has happened to me so many times, and I was delighted to have this book. So it's on one hand, it's a local history, a valuable local history, a part of what was very important to us in our lives. And another way, it's a sort of textbook of the film industry. I know it's you. So for the older people, we'll have no problem. You just get the book and it will speak to itself. For younger people, I suppose a word of explanation as to why we found the film so important. We have some of us here, a lot of us work together. Mackie Dempsey and I worked in Murray's. The working hours are 8 in the morning till 6, and then you did 2 hours overtime till 8. Well, after that you were fit for nothing. But it's a wonderful thing just to go to the pictures and get world-class entertainment on the screen and come out of it relaxed. In fact, more than relaxed, you come out of it feeling you actually were the hero of the plot yourself, and you go into work this morning, John Wayne next morning. You know, it totally transformed you. It was great, wonderful relaxation in that way. Now, just to say a bit about the films themselves, Hollywood is often decried nowadays because they made a lot of mistakes, but they got a lot of good things as well. for instance, censorship is kind of misunderstood in Hollywood. In the 20s, there was a beginning of a movement for more explicitness in the films. Now, if that took off, they would have competed with each other, and it would have got worse and worse and worse. And the film industry would have died out in 2 years. So they had a consensus of opinion, and they put in a kind of a morality committee, and they said no explicitness in the films by their standards, now not by the level of the Irish censor, but by their standards. And then films, the idea of a cheap, quick box office was gone. So they had to turn around then and get really good producers. You know, I recommend Thorberg if you want to study a producer. He got together a whole host of people with graduate degrees in English literature, in German literature, Italian literature, and they studied constantly until they got really good dramas, really good really good characters, really good personalities, good stories, good conflicts. And as Hollywood, I'll explain why everything sort of concentrated in Hollywood, so all the money flowed in there. They could afford to employ the best directors who got together, the best cameramen, the best stuntmen, the best musicians, the best composers. And then they got the stars. Now the stars were a strange quality of people. Some of them weren't the greatest actors, but they had one quality. They could make that story real to you when you went into the film. And they could really bring it to life. They had to be people of sort of bland, everyman kind of faces, so that everyone in the film thought that could identify so much with the film that they thought it was happening to them. You could feel all the emotions of the film, all the worries, all the stresses, and come out of it like a hero. So you'd come out after the bridge of the River Kwai thinking, it was you who blew up that thing. Only 10 minutes ago you blew up that bridge. You came out of it a hero. So we worked such long hours at good work. We were making television cabinets. We were making, really getting good wages. But it wasn't doing anything for ourselves. It wasn't really satisfying on a personal level. But when you went to the pictures then, for the next 2 years, you were a complete hero. So anyway, that's really all I have to say about the book. I have more to say later on about the development of how Youghal happened to have the first films, and maybe the oldest films in Europe, and how that came about. I brought some equipment here to show. Well, obviously at this stage, Horgans were the first to make films in Ireland, and we've brought some of them for you. I'll just tell you quickly, we'll be showing you a film of people coming out of Mass in 1909. We can date that easily. We'll be showing you a film of hunger strikers from Wormwood Scrubs. Now these are only little bits. 3 hunger strikers from Wormwood Scrubs. Now this illustrates the point that we need to do a lot of study in relation to these films to find out first who's in them, and secondly to research the history behind them. Now, extraordinary thing, we have these hunger strikers. Sorry, I should be here. We showed these hunger strikers around to people during the week, and one of them was Kelleher, who was 17 days on hunger strike, and we found one of his relations, and I think she's with us here tonight. Yeah, so we'll get the lady to talk to us later on. Now, we have other processions in that. Now, we want you to look at the early photograph of people coming out of the church and see if you recognise people. Now, they'll be your great-grandparents. I picked up my great-grandmother, my great-great-grandmother Horgan, and my great-great-grandmother Van Hochteboom. She was Dutch. So I'll be able to point like that. As you know, we intend to leave this in the library on and show it constantly, so people will be able to come in and see. Now, it also needs to be digitised because the quality is poor in places. As you can imagine, it was, we found this film, it was celluloid, and it was in
very, very poor condition. It was over 100 years old. My father had stored it in the basement of St. Raphael's to keep the temperature level until he got the money and the time to do it. But he died too early, and we got it done anyway through an AIB grant. So anyway, it's done, and I'll show you. Now, I think for the celebration we decided we'd just do a quick history of how Horgans came to be making films, and they became, the first ones in Ireland and some of the first in the world. And at the end I have something of the Clock Gate. The Clock Gate is now an international animation symbol, and we'll show you a few little animations of the Clock Gate later on. So I'd go back into the history, and I'll be as quick as I can. I'm sure you weren't expecting to be kept this long, but we go. Anyway, the Horgans were photographers in the 1890s. They were only teenage boys. Now, they were very inventive, and they were very good photographers, and they could touch up their photographs with a pencil to make them perfect. Now, as well as that, they went round to all the villages, Eglish, Clashmore, Killa, and that, taking photographs. And when they take photographs on one day, then they go back about a week later with their bicycles, and they'd have the films all printed and ready, not films but photographs printed and ready, dozens of them, and people were mad for it because it was kind of miraculous at the time, photographs. And in the evening then they'd put on a little show, a magic lantern show. Now that's one of the magic lanterns. You can see, if I can show you here. They used to bring around equipment as well and make a big night out. So they'd have magic lantern show, records, radio, and massive equipment. We can put it on the board, that'd be better. So anyway, I'll tell you, it was like an Irish music session the night. All the musicians would come in, all the dancers. They'd show the stereo pairs like this during the day for people to see. So these stereo pairs which showed you a three-dimensional view of the photographs. And with that, then on the back of it, you had a commentary on the. There was a lantern slide with each one of these pairs. Though they had things like the Vatican, hanging gardens, tea pickers in China, and there were educational things. So they'd show the magic lantern slide, and they'd read the little essay on the back of the thing. It wasn't wonderful, it was just a stationary slide, but they had a lot of very good educational stuff. Then they'd show slides of the people themselves that they had photographed during the week, and the people loved seeing themselves up. And then they'd show photographs of the latest pop song, which might be immigrant songs. They'd show it and get someone, they'd play a bit of music with it, and everyone would join in, and they'd have a good night. I'll tell a story about it, I suppose, but I'm afraid I'm keeping you too long. But they were in Tatton's Hotel in Limerick, in Killa one night, and they were having a great time. The party was going on, all the musicians were in. Killa had won the set dancing competition several times. They were very famous for set dancing, as you will see from photographs. And they had set dancers in, and they were having a great night. And next thing they had this chunk outside the door, and they all ignored it, like myself when I was in Sister Carmel's class. And they carried on with the music and the dancing, and they went this chunk again outside the door, and still ignored it. And the time was getting on to 12 o'clock. Next thing they had the chunk again, and a knock at the door. We believe alcoholic liquor has been consumed in this premises after hours. It was the RIC. Everyone made a bolt for the back door anyway, got out as quick as they could. My grandfather stayed because he was a resident. And he said, look, why didn't you give us a warning, tell us, why didn't you let it go? I mean, it was only once a year. And he said, we marched up and down 3 times to get you out of the place and you wouldn't go. So then 1988, I think, the films began to come. Lumiere in Paris invented film, but he wouldn't sell cameras, he only sold projectors. So you had this projector, this magic lantern slide projector, and you bought from Lumiere a tiny piece that went on here, and 2 big spools and a handle to twist it. Now that's about all you got. But they showed wonderful films of the time that they made in French North Africa and really all around the world. But they were wonderful films. The language barrier meant nothing because they were all silent films. I remember seeing one film of the time of a charge by a North African army in the Sahara Desert of camels, and it was wonderful just how simple and easily, with total control, they got this whole camel army to get up and go like they were clockwork. And it was totally exotic. You couldn't do it. You couldn't ever again do something like that. In 1903 or 4, the king was coming to Lismore and the Horgans wanted to photograph him, but you couldn't buy a camera. Lumiere wouldn't sell cameras, they only sold projectors. So they took the piece out of the camera and they made their own camera. And that's, as you said, they went to Lismore. They had a little motor car at the time, an Argyle, which is able to bring it up. And the police didn't know what it was, mostly because the film pours through the camera at an awful rate. And so Uncle Phil had to have his arms sewn into a bag, a black bag, at the bottom of the camera, so that when the film poured out the bottom at 1,000 frames a minute, he was able to wind it up inside the bag. But his hands were inside the bag, he could have had a gun in there. And the police didn't like this at all, the LIC. So they had a bit of a fight. And my grandfather told me about it, and my grandbrother was saying, tone it down a bit. So I don't know how much of a struggle it was. But anyway, the king came along suddenly and he ordered the police to move aside. He wanted to be filmed, it was the moving pictures. And he allowed himself to be filmed, as did Queen Alexandra, which was very brave of them, I'm sure, but it was done. Now we have here a film of their equipment. Now they weren't going to cycle. The main equipment, of course, is the 2 bicycles. Now these films, they brought around record players as well to play records as soon as they became available. Now, as it happened, when records became available, the best singers in the world recorded, and you could send records all over the world. So you had the first superstar of the era. Now you all know Elvis Presley and U2 and the Beatles were all superstars, but the 2 superstars of that time were Caruso and John McCormack. And John McCormack was critically regarded as better than Caruso. So they were the first massive big superstars of the time. So they were able to bring records like that around and people wanted to see them. Now that's the Magic Lantern projector there. That's the Lumiere bit, that bit, and the 2 wheels. And they were able to make film. They were able to make their own film from then on. Jim Horgan then went on to invent a camera which would make its own prints, because when you take a camera like that, on the ordinary, it's a negative, as you remember from taking photographs. So you'd have 1,000 photographs a minute to print, and you do 5 minutes film of 5,000 photographs. They'd have to go to London to be printed and to take a week. But he invented a camera, which, how do we have it? That's the camera there, which could make its own prints. Well, I can explain it some other time, I suppose. But the patent for the camera would cost about $250,000 in today's money. So he teamed up with Can Company, Kann, and they gave him the first one off the projection line and a lot of money. And the first 2 projectors, first 2 projectors for the new cinema, one of which is still in the film archives in Dublin in the Irish Film Institute, and it has been restored and still works. It was of course hand cranked in the original day, but the Horgans had to install electricity. So for anyone interested in that element of it, the electricity had to be produced alongside the cinema. There was a massive big engine, petrol paraffin thing, which would just stroke like a boom, 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 boom. Not like a pouring engine of today, a big cylinder went banging up and down. And that wouldn't work for cinema because the projector would go bump, 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 and the cinema, the electricity would be uneven. So they had a massive big flywheel which weighed about a ton. and then at where the engine connected with the dynamo which made the electricity, they had 6 inches of leather between the two to even out the stroke. So they had electricity in Youghal, the first electricity in Youghal. They had to have it for the can projector and to show the films. And of course they had it in the house then as well. They had electric light in Youghal before anyone else. Not that people in Youghal needed electricity because they had an excellent gas company. But anyway, first electricity. A quick note again about sound. They bought copies of a Passion play. And the play at that time would show people, with the old-fashioned silent acting. And then there'd be a little patch with the writing on it to see what the person had just said. Well, they cut all them out. And a family called Horgans, which survives in the person of Morgan O'Connor today, learned how to make records. Now, there was kind of do-it-yourself attitude. At that time, you did everything yourself. You learned how to make things yourself. Morgan's made a record of the sound. I think my grandfather was Jesus, actually. But they made the record and they put this on in the cinema for a charity on Good Friday. So that was probably the first sound film ever made in Ireland. And I'll just say a bit quickly about the animation. They made the world first animation, and I'll tell you more about it later on. We'll have a look at the films now that survived from 1906. So all of you, your great-grandparents and grandparents are in this. The quality is sometimes poor, but no other town in Europe has film of this time, of their own people. And we have everybody, because everybody was at second mass. Now, I'll point out a few people if I can. We also have film of fire brigade practice and hunger striker, and we have film of the Sinn Féin rally in Cork to support the Lord Mayor who died on hunger strike. So we need to get a lot of research into history. Now, if anyone else has a pointer, you can point to it. The gentlemen had top hats, workers had ordinary hats coming out, ladies had wonderful creations. That's my great-grandmother, I think, coming out there, maybe not.
Does it? I think, yeah.
Yes, that's my great-grandmother there, Grandmother Horgan. She was a Hennessy from Cherrymount Farm.
Just Ted
Yeah, the fire brigade man has a...
That's Uncle Ted there.
Oh, that's Uncle Ted. No, we'll see anyway. Yeah, that's Uncle Ted, Ted Horgan, born 1902. After a while, funny enough, even though the quality is bad, you will recognise people. That's Ted again there, wandering around to get in the shot again. Carpenters and tradesmen had bowler hats. He's a tradesman himself. He's a tradesman as well. The ladies with the shawls. Some of the shawls were wool and they weren't very good. Others were sealskin and they were very valuable. If we get this digitized, you'll be able to pick people out much more easily. See, the ladies with the shawls are a bit embarrassed toward the camera. They don't know whether they want to be photographed. That lady didn't mind very much. There's Ted Horgan again, look, little devil. There's my great-grandmother, Hodgebun, just coming down there. She was born in the second run of the famine. You notice the hats, all kinds of confections. That's a sailor there with a sailor's cap. You can see the fire chief with kind of French hat. The quality varies, but we'll be able to digitize it and get much more quality. But faces are, you can see people, and we've identified people quite easily. That fellow I think is called Donoghue. He's the image of Jimmy Drake, but it isn't, it's too old. I think he's Donoghue. You notice the men are very neat. You know, this sort of white white shirt and tie always, and cap, and three-piece suit. Very neat, very respectable, very good opinion of themselves. And the ladies, of course, are wonders altogether. And that's a procession down at Devonshire Square. We only a little bit of it there now. We also have photographs of people who came back from the First World War. As a celebration, they all got together and marched up the street, and they had a big celebration for the First World War. You can go ahead there. According to RTE, there was no celebration after the First World War, but of course there was. Why would people not celebrate people surviving the First World War? They had a big parade down the town with bands playing and everything, and it was wonderful. And that's a fire brigade practice on the madhouse in Youghal. So they were practiced, escaping out of the thing, and then they ran the fire brigade round it. That's the fire hose. That's the fire engine, believe it or not, and these are the ladders. It's the fire chief, a very busy little man there. Very busy, he's organising everybody. Now they're going to make a run around the town hall for practice. He'll get all the boys, gather up all the boys to run after him and make a bit of a show. He's a bit of a character, I'd say. There's a Heron's boatyard there where the concrete is, you see it? Fine big boatyard. There's the fire engine going off. And now you'll see him coming out the other side, and there's a ship just going to sea at the other side as well. That's another procession, either the Mall with those big trees, or it's the entrance to Green Park. The Mall had big trees like that. That's either the League of the Cross band or the Home Rule band. A special band was set up to celebrate Home Rule, and all the bands in the region went down to Waterford and marched across the bridge in Waterford in support of Home Rule. That man there is the sacristan of the church. He'd be known to a lot of you as Willie Carey. He lived to be 100, so I think anyone would nearly know Willie. In the Young Men's Society, Willie was given life membership when he reached 100, as was Tommy Murray. He was given life membership of the Young Men's Society when he was 100. So we have to recognise a lot of people from this now, because the photographs, it's quite good actually. That's an earlier procession, little girls all beautifully dressed up, white everything, and some of them have lace over their faces, which is probably your lace, we might guess at. That's the May procession you might remember the May procession in the Presentation Convent. Yeah, it was a lovely, got a fine day in May, and they brought the whole school out and made a procession. Fascinating here is the little boys in +4s and these huge broad-brimmed hats. And if you watch carefully, you would see a girl with a lame step who we think is Mary Crowley. But it would mean she was nearly 100 when she died, if it is. And I think she was. It's the Sinn Féin rally, which is Sinn Féin monster rally in Cork, probably in support of the Lord Mayor who died on hunger strike. The first Lord Mayor was murdered, as we believe, and then his successor, I think Terence McSweeney, went on hunger strike and died on it. See how beautifully neat the men are. Everyone collar and tie, caps, three-piece suits. Beautifully clean and well got up and fit looking. Whoever is in that car is probably the leader of the parade.
We haven't got very much history on this because we just found out a bit about this recently. But my grandfather took photographs of 3 hunger strikers who were interned in Wormwood Scrubs in February. When is it right now?
1920.
In 1920.
The deportation order says 17th of February 1920.
The 17th of February 1920. So we have 3 photographs. We have 3 people who were interned. One was Michael Kelleher, and my husband went to great did some great detective work, and we found Michael's daughter, who lives in Inishannon. So Ina Murphy, Michael Kelleher's daughter, is here tonight. So we welcome her here tonight. So we are trying to piece together the history.
Sorry, I was away from this.
Right. So the first person interned was Michael Kelleher, and he went on hunger strike for 17 days. There were 3 Youghal men who were Irish volunteers and were interned. So the first is Michael Kelleher, the second one is Willie John Bland, and the third is Ned Green. So if anybody has any information on these, the other 2, it would be great if we could put together the history of it. So this is Michael Kelleher.
Oh, it's not his gone.
No, the first one is Michael Kelleher, and Ina has said that, what is it, and you have the only
deportation order.
the only deportation order in Ireland, and the reason they have it is because Ina's father put it into the sole of his shoe, so he was able to sneak it out of the prison.
He was in Spike Island at the time, and there was a surgeon there from Youghal, Surgeon Ronan, and he befriended a lot of the inmates, and he helped him to put it into the sole of his shoe.
Right.
And it was never found. The others all had to hand theirs up when they landed in Wormwood Scrubs, but he held on to his.
Yes, so this is the only one in Ireland. So if you'd see, there's Willie John Bland, Ned Green, and Michael. So,
Fought all through the war, was arrested and then deported without trial. There were 20 years on hunger strike in Waterford, and one of the last to be released. That's Doug Bland. So he must have been fairly loyal if he fought all through the war. This is Green, released from Wormwood Scrubs after 17 days on hunger strike. There he is. Yeah, we'll go on to the animation finish.
Where?
One little bit of it about the Clock Gate animation. That's the last thing we'll do. I'm sure you're fed up at this stage. There was a competition for students of animation a couple of years ago, run by the Japanese. Or the prize was put up by the Japanese, who were always looking for good animators, talent, and run by the French. They put up just 40 frames, just about 10 seconds of animation each student had to do. But rather than make sure everyone wouldn't come up with Mickey Mouse, they said it has to be about your own country, you know. And as well as that, it has to start with the Clock Gate in Youghal. So the Clock Gate in Youghal is now an international symbol, with every country in the world, its students have used it in this competition. So we got some of the Irish ones, and there we go. But they're very short. You have to concentrate very quickly because the animations only take about 15 seconds. Watch the method rather than the story. There's the animation of the first little one. There's a boy looking out over the thing. And he just flew off, and that's about all it is. That's his little bit. That's just a little student animation. They were only allowed that much. They had to make that thing. This is the second one. This is about Cuchulainn and the invention of Horgan with Cuchulainn's dog. It's nicely done. I think that's a very good animation, that little one. I don't know who won the prize now, but he certainly wasn't bad. This is one little fox going to sea, and the main thing here is the sea, how the animator made the waves and made the boat go up and down. And even the sun is kind of alive. So they're arriving in France for some reason, I don't know. Character from the Book of Kells. So he fights this big fella. Very quick, bright animation, very fast. It's a really good chase scene, but he only gets 40 frames, of course, he's finished there. This one is about the history of building in Ireland. That Youghal is the first building. And there's Cashel with the towers and the monks. And Courthouse in Dublin. And what they call that, the canister or something in present day. Very quick little animation, but does the job. So that's it, I'm afraid. And I can't say we put Youghal on the map, but we put the Clock Gate on the map, except nobody knows where the Clock Gate is, so that's the best we could do. So that's all, everybody. Thank you for coming along.